Hi everyone, another episode of Hub Talks coming to you from Digital Bridge, Astana, Kazakhstan, October 2023. Here we have our guest today is James Barrat, filmmaker, author. James, welcome to the program.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
As I said, right before we started recording, the goal, despite the time limit, to produce hopefully an evergreen piece of an evergreen episode on a few topics. One of them will be your book, why you think AI is one of the sort of biggest dangers to the humanity. But in part two, we'll discuss your experience producing a lot of award-winning documentaries, and then we hopefully can give some advice for aspiring filmmakers.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's start from the book.
Yeah.
Our Final Invention, Artificial Intelligence at the End of Human Era. You wrote it 10 years ago?
I wrote it 10 years
Yeah.
ago, but it was recently updated.
Yeah.
And I'm writing another book about AI right now.
Tell us about the sort of what inspired you to write the book.
Well,
I know it's exhausting to do it at 6 p.m., but let's give it a
no,
shot.
it's fine. 10 years ago, I was very high on AI. I thought it was all good news. I was reading a lot of Ray Kurzweil, who's a very important thinker and inventor.
Singularity is near.
Yeah, great book. I liked his Age of Spiritual Machines. And I got to interview him for a film, and he brought up the idea that, well, it might get out of our control. And then I started honing in on that. I thought that was a very interesting thing I hadn't heard before. And so instead of being really enamored of AI, I became skeptical, and I talked to a lot of people who all said, well, in the short term, we'll get a lot of benefits from AI. We'll get a lot of interesting toys. We'll get a lot of interesting programs. That's all happening right now. We'll get some tools that are good, and we'll get some business tools that are good. But eventually, the intelligence of AI will continue to grow, and ours will not. Our intelligence is flatline. We're not getting any smarter. Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence is exponential. It gets faster and better every year. So, in the short term, we've got problems like there's bias in the data that discriminates against women and minorities. There's people that want to make autonomous battlefield robots and drones, and these are machines that kill without a human in the loop. We've got a bunch of other issues that just make AI a little bit unpleasant. And right now, with the advent of generative AI, we've got a whole slew of other problems. So AI is definitely a dual-use technology, and that means it's capable of great good and great harm. And so I remember listening to lectures by AI experts, and they had what I call the 2-minute problem. They would talk about the benefits of AI for 58 minutes, and for 2 minutes they talk about the dangers. And then gradually I realized the dangers really kind of outweigh the benefits, because in the long term AI could become smarter than we are. And we have no idea how to control machines that are smarter than us.
We've never done before, yeah.
We've never experienced it before. In fact, we have technology doesn't offer any clues because we've never invented anything that's smarter than us. But our own evolution, as I said in my talk today, does provide some clues. We humans steer the future, not because we're the fastest or the strongest creature, but because we're the most intelligent. When we share the planet with something smarter than us, they will steer the future. And so, and then I wondered, why are all these companies pouring billions of dollars into technology that may destroy us? And that became really the theme of this book. Now there are, I admit now, there are still some good applications of AI. AI has a potential terrific benefit in medicine. It has a lot of benefit in the financial world. But generative AI, for example, ChatGPT, is very unreliable. It hallucinates, which is just a fancy word for saying it doesn't tell the truth all the time. You could use it to make a lot of propaganda at a scale we've never seen before. You could use it to change elections. You could use it to destroy democracy. So there are a lot of people that were instrumental in inventing AI who are coming out now and saying, hey, wait a minute, AI could destroy us. So what I was writing about 10 years ago is really becoming mainstream now.
Yeah.
A lot of people, back in 2013, nobody talked about extinction, that AI could overwhelm us and we become extinct. Now everybody talks about extinction. So if a lot of the things I said in this came true, but I was doing a lot of reporting more than just generating ideas. There's a lot of people who were thinking these thoughts 10 years ago.
What do you think is the path forward?
The what?
What do you think is the path moving forward for us? How do we stay on this planet?
Well, right now, I got to say, I don't think we have a chance, and that's because
the genie's out of the bottle. The genie's out of the bottle.
The genie's out of the bottle, but the companies that are making the AI are pouring billions of dollars into creating a technology that we really don't understand. You know, generative AI is created by, it ingests, for example, all the data on the internet, plus tens of thousands of books and works of art. If you open it up, all you see is a constellation of decimals. You can't interpret it. It's uninterpretable. Now, old-fashioned AI, rule-based AI, expert systems, the way we used to do things, you could open them up and see exactly what was happening.
Yep.
That's not true with generative AI. And generative AI has strange properties, emergent properties. Like when they created ChatGPT, they didn't know that it could translate. They didn't know it could do a lot of things, and at first they were kind of delighted and surprised, but then they realized this could be a big Pandora's box. When they released, Microsoft put a program called Tay on Twitter, and the idea was it would become the personality of Twitter by absorbing all the tweets, and it was a deep learning neural net.
It's a racist neural net, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was maybe 5 years ago, and it started within about 3 or 4 days. It started becoming anti-Semitic, racist, foul-mouthed. If that was a representative of Twitter, which it was trained on, then Twitter is a cesspool, and so they pulled the plug, and that sort of thing has happened a lot. So the trouble is they're ingesting all this information. Two things. One is they don't pay for any of the data. My book was absorbed in ChatGPT. A lot of works of art, tens of thousands of books. None of us got a royalty payment for all that theft. And the artists call it the biggest theft of art and culture in history. And because it scrapes everything from the internet, it gets good and bad. You can ask it if you know how to ask it, you could get the plans for a nuclear bomb, because they exist somewhere on the internet. You could get plans for making sarin poison, because it exists on the internet. Anything that exists on the internet, you have access to. So they basically, and some people made it open source. OpenAI released a lot of their generative AI models, and they made it open source. So it's like telling people, well, if you go to the hardware store, you just buy this, this, and this, and you can walk away with nerve gas. So there's a lot of things wrong with that.
Let's talk about, if you look at the history of AI, I mean, the term was coined back in back in 50s, there was a symposium and I think a seminar in Dartmouth.
Yep.
There were different periods. There were AI winters. There was a period of expert systems which didn't really go anywhere. There was a period of a lot of excitement. There was a period of, again, kind of disillusionment. But that's kind of, let's see, like 2012 or so, it was an ImageNet moment when kind of for the first time computer vision algorithms became superior than a human eye in identifying objects. But there were a lot of like sort of what we have at the moment, if you look at the status quo, it is a lot of vertical AI systems like autonomous vehicles or computer vision algorithms, or let's say text generation tools, which are really good and better than humans in vertical tasks. Like AGI, artificial general intelligence, our final invention. If we when we invent that, that will
lead to the final invention, really.
Yeah, I mean AGI will kind of invent the rest. It can do anything.
Yep.
What do you think is the path from where we are at the moment, which we have a bunch of vertical AIs, to AGI? When timeline wise, what's your prediction when it's going to happen?
The trouble with the future is it's hard to predict.
Yeah.
I was interviewing Gary Marcus the other day, in fact, for a different book.
Professor at NYU, I believe, right?
Yeah.
One of the skeptics.
Yeah, he's a big skeptic. But I was asking him, what do we need to get from where we are to AGI? And he's been a big critic of generative AI, but I need to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Deep learning was very powerful. Neural nets became very powerful after a time. And deep learning is just really a lot of neural nets combined, a lot of layers of learning algorithms. But then Google made something called Transformer, and it was like it supercharged neural nets. It gave them the ability to pay attention to words in a way that hadn't been done before. And so it was able to do an analysis of words and find, what it's really doing is a statistical analysis of words in its vast library of words. I mean, billions of words, and find the next word, the next best word, and then the next best phrase, and then the next best paragraph, and an essay, based on examining the prompt. Like if you ask it, what's the connection between social media and teen suicide? It would take all those words, it would find all the relationships, and it would give you a really well-written essay. I've actually done that. And that was because of Transformer, and that really supercharged AI. Now, it's important to remember that all it's doing is statistical analysis. It doesn't know the meaning of any of the words. It doesn't know what suicide is. It doesn't know what a book is. So I asked Gary Marcus, and I asked Eliezer Yudkowsky, and I asked Steve Almejandro and some others, what do we need to get from where we are to AGI, to human level intelligence? Well, it needs common sense. It doesn't have any common sense. It doesn't know what a cup is. It doesn't know you can cup your hands. You also need reasoning. It doesn't reason. Now, some people think it does reason, but the majority really don't think it reasons. You can ask it a question, and then you can say, give me the step-by-step analysis of that question, and it can come out with something that looks like reasoning. But it's not really true reasoning. It also needs to know context. So if you ask it any question, like again, the cup is on the table, it doesn't know what a cup or a table is. So it has no context for understanding that. You could train it on that. You could train it on that. You could train it on common sense. You could train it on agency. It has no agency. It only responds to a prompt. It doesn't go out and find questions on its own. It doesn't think creatively. All of those things are doable. Once they're done, you've got AGI. and basically AGI is human, like roughly human level intelligence. But you got to remember this: our intelligence is general, but only in the scope of human intelligence. It's not general across the board. Like, we can't name all the plants in the sea or all the animals in the sea. Although you could say that would be part of general intelligence. So when we talk about general intelligence, we're talking about a very limited domain of human general intelligence. And that is a easier thing to achieve than beyond human level intelligence. So there are a lot of roadblocks between us and AGI. However, there are people working hard at defeating those roadblocks. And then once they've made AGI, and then the danger is you give it agency, and it will develop sub-goals, like any advanced AI will want to not be unplugged. It will want resources, whether it's electricity or fuel or money, in order to achieve its goals. It may develop subroutines, like this person is trying to stop me from achieving my goals, so I'm going to kill them. That's when AGI goes into superintelligence. That's when it becomes better than us at a giant variety of things. And then, at some point, it'll do artificial intelligence research and development better than we do. And it will set the pace of intelligence expansion, not us. Then the barn door is closed, the horse is gone, we've lost. If that happens without us aligning its values with ours, alignment is a big issue right now. If that happens, we're done. So a lot of people are working to keep that from happening. A lot of people are hopeless and think that you can never align AI's values with ours.
You think it's possible?
I don't. I know a company called MIRI, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, that's been trying to do that since 2000.
Wow.
And they've gotten nowhere. I'm going to interview someone from OpenAI whose whole job is AI alignment. There are many ways to go about it, but it's a giant field full of holes. And all the holes are critical stoppers, critical defeaters. It's just very, very hard to train an AI to value human life, to adopt our values. And if you got them to adopt our values, whose values would those be? Because, my values are different from your values. If we asked everybody in this room, if you try to set a goal of preserve human life, we could get in a big argument about when human life begins. And if you move around the world, you get in a bigger argument about when human life begins. And so you couldn't really agree on that. And if you went forward and backward in time, you would also disagree. So if you locked that value in, it wouldn't be relevant in 100 years. So these are some of the problems of aligning our values with AI. We have a very hard time specifying values. And so far it's been a total roadblock.
So we made a lot of progress when it comes to we as humanity, when it comes to software, the world of bits as opposed to the world of atoms. But when you go home, you still have to load your dishes into the dishwashing machine, or it's not by robots. So the AI in the world of atoms is not as developed, right? So it's sort of we are potentially going to modify or augment white-collar workers initially, and then go for kind of more the world of atoms. So let's say we have AGI at the moment. I mean, let's imagine.
And you're defining AGI as human level.
Let's define it as beyond human level.
Okay,
right?
that's superintelligence.
Superintelligence,
yeah.
Exactly. If it lives in data centers, humans can unplug it, and sort of do we have a chance? I know there's a job description in OpenAI that's like the job is to just unplug the AI if it goes wild. What is your?
That's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Two reasons why.
Please.
Any big cognitive architecture like that, a lot of it will live in the cloud. It won't be unpluggable. It'll live in data centers and a variety of data centers, so you'd have to unplug all the data centers.
Right.
The second thing is, by the time it got to be AGI, about the time it's AGI,
Right.
it's going to learn that it shouldn't be unplugged. And then by the time it's super intelligent, as I wrote in this book, it might just hibernate. It might pretend to be stupid.
Correct.
And it might just wait for you to get bored and then escape. We can't overestimate what superintelligence can do. And it will even right now we've had examples of social engineering or manipulating people. There was something called LambdaLMDA. It was a generative AI system, a large language module, and it convinced an engineer at Google that it had a soul.
And he was fired afterwards.
Well, yeah, and he should have been. He convinced him he had a soul. He wanted to hire a lawyer to represent it because he thought it had rights. Now, if he can convince one person, we got to think that Greg LeMoyne is not the most. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's not the dumbest either. If AI can convince somebody that it has a soul and needs to be released and not treated like a tool, then 5 years from now, it'll be able to convince everybody. And in the shorter term, it'll be able to convince people. Right now, I'm worried about propaganda coming out of large language models. Very, very persuasive propaganda that uses the fear people have to make them militant, to make them unhappy, to make them, racist, biased, afraid of immigrants, all those things. We're very, very close to generative AI being able to do that.
Do you see a scenario where we as humanity can coexist peacefully with AGI? Just like we as humans can coexist with ants. We don't really...
With ants?
Yeah, we don't kill ants unless let's say, I can imagine that construction workers building bridges...
I kill ants all the time.
Yeah, but
do we kill ants in my garden?
Right, but do we kill ants on like a mass scale? Do we kill all of them? A lot of ants just coexist with us. Is it possible that we can coexist with superintelligence, in your mind?
It's possible, but it's possible. It's just unlikely. Because, they don't value the same things we do, and we've talked about that. They won't value the climate. They don't need the climate the way we do. They may, superintelligence can transform all the atoms of the planet into other atoms it has uses for. Eliezer Yudkowsky says the AI doesn't love you or hate you, but you're made of atoms it can use for something else.
Right.
So I think you could have, and a lot of people talk about this. You could have catastrophic accidents. You could have catastrophic disasters that may not totally wipe out humanity. There may be pockets left. But the way we're headed, with our blinkers on, our blinders on, we're not gonna give ourselves that chance. We're gonna create superintelligence that doesn't have any empathy for us, any sense that we are living things. It may not know what we are. And by the time it's that smart, we won't understand it at all. We may not be able to see it. As Stephen Hawking said, it may develop weapons that we don't understand. So we're talking about, imagine something that's 1,000,000 times more intelligent than we are.
Yeah.
So all the thinking it does in a day would take us 1,000,000 days to do. So we're not even on the same scale. It's not even ants and humans. It's godlike. It's infinite.
Short-term optimism, long-term pessimism is a good way to summarize your stance on this?
How about short-term pessimism and long-term pessimism?
Both of them.
Because we don't have the wisdom right now to, we have problems with, we're developing battlefield robots and drones. It's a really stupid idea. We'll have rich countries will have robot armies killing poor countries, or rich parts of town will have robot armies killing the poor parts of town. We have bias in the data right now. We're using data that was generated 20 years ago when, for example, women didn't go to college as much as men. So right now, the algorithms that allow people into college disfavor women. They also disfavor blacks. The algorithms that determine a prison sentence are biased against minorities. We have problems right now, and we don't have the will to address them because it's expensive. And a lot of the rich AI companies don't think it's necessary. It's not bothering them. They're billionaires. They've already been to college. They've already gotten mortgage loans. In the long term, we don't have the wisdom to do what needs to be done now. So I don't think we're going to get any smarter and do what needs to be done later.
There is a solution, obviously, which is government regulation. I mean, if all governments just stop AI,
yes.
It will be illegal to do any AI research, then we just stop
Yes.
the entire development, just what happened with atomic development. I mean, the model of atomic nuclear reactor, I mean, hasn't really changed since.
Well, you talk about nuclear fission, and we've got something like 20,000 nuclear warheads armed and ready to go.
Right.
That's the same technology as power plants, and there's a big movement to start power plants up again.
But when it comes to, what's your take on that? So should government just say, hey, this is a big risk to humanity? We should just let's sacrifice progress.
Yeah. The idea is called relinquishment. Do we relinquish this technology?
Yeah.
We have relinquished technology before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've stopped the use of bacterial weapons, although some people still use it. We've generally stopped it. We've also tried to stop the use of chemical weapons. We successfully stopped the cloning of humans, except for one Chinese guy, and he's in jail.
Yeah.
So we can relinquish technology. We can determine this is too dangerous. I think right now, we look at a generative AI model and we do not know what's going on inside. Until we do, we should stop developing it.
Got it.
We should stop for our own safety. And I'm all for stopping development until we understand it. And they're trying to develop a science for understanding what's going on, but that will take years. But it's really what we have to do if we want to survive. But meanwhile, there's something like 100 AI experts who are working on AI safety. Meanwhile, there's 1,500 who are developing AI as fast as they can.
Yeah.
And there's so much money to be made. Several AI experts, Stuart Russell said it's silly to think that we'll stop it. So we really
incentives are so high, yeah.
Yeah, because it's so profitable.
Yeah.
So we're digging our own grave, and we're not wise enough to stop it.
This is a chapter 1 of our discussion on AI. Chapter 2, which was something I was really looking forward to, is you wrote some of the most popular documentaries with National Geographic, History Channel. Tell us the playbook on how to make a good, successful documentary, starting from an idea to a final product. What's the path? How do you get there?
Well, I don't want to tell you about my suicide idea because I just had a film on PBS about suicide prevention. That's a little bit dark, so I'll start with something easier.
Yeah.
What used to happen? What happened to me a lot was, I was given an idea. For example, on the black market, somebody found the Gospel of Judas. Not a gospel written by Judas, but a gospel written by followers of Judas about 100 years after the canonical gospels were written. So we instantly bought the right. I was approached by National Geographic and they said, "Are you interested in pursuing this?" And I said, "Yes." And so you start with research. and you go. I went to Switzerland where they were trying to put it back together. They got it. It was a Gnostic Gospel. Now, Gnostic translates into the people who know, and it's kind of a sarcastic term for the age.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little biblical history. Irenaeus was a 2nd century leader of the church, and he decided there should be 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And he based that on the idea that there were 4 winds: north, south, east, and west. It wasn't a deep theological discussion. So when other Gospels came along after the canonical Gospels, he made fun of them and he called them, oh, those are the people who really know. One of them was the Gospel of Judas, and it turned the whole crucifixion on its head. It said basically Jesus wanted to be crucified, and in order to start a movement, and Judas was his agent. And only Judas had the courage to betray him. So this was heretical to the church. So in my research, I went to Switzerland. I talked to the people who were translating it. I went to a lot of biblical scholars and said, what is the importance of this? I went to the 2 or 3 premier Gnostic experts. There are people that just write about Gnosticism, which is a whole bunch of texts that were written after the canonical Gospels, like 100 years later. Now, we have to know just a little more background. None of the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were actually written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. They were written by the followers of them. So the Gnostic Gospels in that way are not that different. They're just different in time. So you do a lot of research. You become an expert. And you become an expert by talking to experts and reading everything you possibly can. Then once you've got an idea in your mind about how the story should be told, then you write a treatment. And a treatment is, and it starts out small, it's called a one-pager. And you pass that around to the chiefs, and they make suggestions. And then you turn that into a 20-pager. And that's basically a longer treatment. And then you can turn that into a shooting script. So now you've interviewed people, and you're going to slug in some interview bites. But by that point, you have to know, well, I'm going to follow the thread of the archaeology. We're going to go to Egypt. We're going to find out where this gospel was found. It was found in Egypt. We actually found the cave. It was a Gnostic burial. It was a burial of a monk. Sometimes monks were buried with their favorite gospel. This one was heretical. He would have been killed if he'd been found with it. But he decided to be buried with it. He was so fond of it. So there's the archaeology thread. Then there was the let's put it back together thread and translate it. Then there was what would Jesus' life look like if this were true, if Judas was actually his strongest apostle. And so we did a recreation of what that world would look like, what that relationship would look like. So then you've got 3 moving parts, and you've got by this time, you're trying to raise money, and you're trying to get National Geographic excited, and they were really excited. They were excited and scared. They were afraid that we'd get protests, which we did.
How did you fund your research to lead to the final documentary?
Oh my gosh, you interview experts, and that's the greatest thing about being a documentary filmmaker, at least doing history, is you get to call up the best historians in the world and say, "Hey, I'm trying to track down the provenance, which means where it came from, the provenance of the Gospel of Judas." And all the experts go, "Holy cow, you found the Gospel of Judas?" Because it's been rumored about for 1,000 years. And they're so excited to pitch in, and then you learn what they know, and you put the story together.
Well, yesterday I was talking to my younger brother. He's 11 years younger than myself. I mentioned that I'm going to talk to the filmmaker behind Taboo, and he is a big fan. I mean, he watched the Taboo documentaries on History Channel when he was in third grade.
Taboo, the series?
Yes.
Okay.
Taboo, the series. Tell us about the origin of how this series came about.
That was actually National Geographic.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Not History Channel. Sorry about
Yeah, that's all right. Well, there's a lot of social customs that are just weird.
that. How did you just discover? How do you even like go about thinking about this idea? Is it like
I didn't come up with the idea. It was a series, and they invited me to join it.
Join? Go ahead. Okay.
They have a development department at National Geographic, at Discovery, and all they do is sit around thinking about ideas.
Gotcha.
Now they also, another big way they get ideas is people like me come to them and say, hey, I'd like to do a film about suicide. And they go, oh no, we don't want to do a film about suicide. Finally, PBS said, yes, we'd like to do a film about suicide, because they know that in America, suicide is growing exponentially. It's the number 2 killer of kids between 10 and 25. So what could we do that would be helpful? Well, we could make a film that shows the sign. We could find some people that either killed themselves or tried to kill themselves, tell the story of their lives and all the different stress factors that added up to their suicide. And nobody gets one bad event and then kills himself. It's not my wife left me, I killed myself. It's like I have a drinking problem, my wife left me and I lost my job and my house. That's about enough to drive a lot of people over the edge.
It's a collection of problems.
Yes. If you have a teenager living at home, we could tell them, here's a lot of the stress factors for teenagers. If you notice your kid, and we had a teenager in the film, if you notice your kid is keeping to himself and has stopped doing the things he likes to do, and he seems depressed, then he may be a candidate for suicide. And you've got to talk to him. And you've got to ask him the question, are you thinking about killing yourself? And people think that asking them that question makes them go off and kill themselves. It does not. And they've done studies that show that doesn't happen. What it does is it starts a really good conversation. And it helps that kid or that adult get some of it off their chest and then start addressing the problems, getting some help. So we thought we could do some good by telling the story of 3 different people, 2 of them who tried to kill themselves and didn't succeed, and 1 who did. And in the meantime, tell the stories, tell the stress factors that lead to suicide, so that you at home can look for it. You, if you're a teacher, can look for it
And prevent it. Yeah.
and try and prevent it. So in that case, I went to a bunch of channels and had a treatment already.
Yeah.
And finally, it was PBS, public television, that said, yes, we want to do that.
When are you going to release it?
It's already been released. It came out last year.
Oh, well, wonderful.
And I wrote a book about it. I wrote the companion book that will come out next summer.
How long does it take to go from an idea, from a treatment, to a documentary being released on a channel, roughly speaking?
It's hard to generalize. That one took a long time because we got interrupted by COVID, and we couldn't shoot for 2 years. So that one would have taken 3 years.
The numerous documentaries you were part of, which are maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 most memorable and close to your heart?
Wow. Well, suicide. Although I have a hard time with it now because
It's the most recent one, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with it because I spent a lot of time with suicide, and it can, as you can imagine, it can be depressing. But I feel like it did a lot of good, and we got a lot of feedback saying that, I was helped by this, my son was helped by this, I saw the signs for my daughter. So we got a lot of feedback saying we'd done some good. The Gospel of Judas was one of my favorite ones because it was so mysterious. And I think the high point was actually going into the Egyptian desert and finding the cave where the Coptic priest had been buried.
Oh.
And his tomb had been plundered. But we found pieces of Coptic cloth and fragments of Coptic pottery, and we knew it was the place. I made a film about Afghanistan.
Lost Treasures, right?
Yeah, Lost Treasures of Afghanistan. That was really, really close to my heart because it was about the artists in Afghanistan when the Taliban took over, who risked their lives to save their art. because the Taliban wanted to destroy all the art, anything that portrays a soul. So anything with a face, any painting with a face, any sculpture with a face, they wanted to destroy. Any movie, they wanted to destroy. So they were destroying it all, and these very, very brave artists and filmmakers and sculptors risked their lives to save their art. And they would have been killed had they been caught. And it was wonderful to spend time with them, and unfortunately, it's all gone back to the Taliban now. So I don't know what's happened to those people.
What was the very first documentary you were part of?
That was back before there was television. A film called Who Built the Pyramids?
Uh-huh.
And I'd written something else. I'd written a play, actually, and somebody recruited me and said, "I'm writing a documentary. You want to try your hand at writing a documentary?" And it was about, there was an archaeologist named Jay Leonard, and he had kind of figured out how they built the giant pyramids on the Giza Plateau. He figured out that they made ramps and built it on ramps of soil, and built it as they went up, and then they took the ramps away, and there it was. And that was a thrill. I got to go there. I climbed up the pyramids. It was, I was really, really lucky, because my first real job in documentary was with National Geographic.
How old were you back?
I was in my late 20s. So yeah, it was very thrilling.
When it comes to, let's go through a hypothetical example, or maybe not so hypothetical. Let's say I, unlike yourself,
Yeah.
I don't have a good idea for a documentary.
Yeah.
However, I have a rough idea that I want to, let's say, interview 12 Kazakh women who are software engineers in Silicon Valley.
Excellent idea.
I interview them.
Yeah.
I don't have an idea initially what will unite them, but
Right.
but
No,
through
that's
the
fine.
process of interviewing them and learning about their life and how they got
Yeah.
to where they are,
Yeah.
you have a material, you have 12 interviews.
Yep.
How do you turn those 12 interviews into a documentary?
I can tell you, because I'm doing that. I'm turning about 12 interviews into a book right now. So you take all the transcripts, and I'll tell you, there's a program called Happy Scribe. If you record the interview, you drop the MP4 into Happy Scribe, and it makes a transcript. I used to pay people $200 an hour for a transcript. This thing costs like $12 an hour. It's incredible.
Game changer.
It's only about 80% accurate, so you still have to go through and make corrections. So you go through and you judge the interviews very harshly, and you grade the bytes. Here's how I do it. You grade the bytes A, B, C. Then you throw away all the C's based on how strong the bytes are. Then you go through and you look at the B's very closely, and you get rid of about half of them.
Got it.
And now you've got the A's. Then whatever the A's say, you build your story out of.
Aha.
Because you're going to have the strongest, and by strongest I mean feeling is more important than content. But content is important, but feeling beats content. If they're saying, "Oh, I learned how to program and I saw my life change. I saw a door open up," that's in your show.
Yes.
If they say something boring, that's not in your show.
So the way you decide whether it's A or B or C is through the emotional component.
I would say the emotional component, you still have to tell a story.
Yes.
And you can decide whether or not to use narration also. You know? Or you can go back and re-interview and get them to fill in the gaps. Or you can take all your A's, build a story, and say, I got some holes. And then go back and get some more interviews and get them to fill in the holes. Ask them questions that help fill in those holes.
Interesting idea. So basically, you have all the A's and B's, and then you build your story based on that kind of gems or whatever
wherever it takes you, you build your story on that. Now, what it will take you, every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you've got to have that. So when you go out to interview them, you'll say, tell me about your childhood.
Yes.
When did you discover programming?
Yes.
What was your aha moment? And I was asking this about people dealing with AI. Like, what was your aha moment when you realized it was dangerous? Because most of the people I talked to about AI went in feeling very positive about it. So you ask them, what was your aha moment? And they may cry because it was so powerful. And then, where are they now? You've got to structure your questions into a beginning, a middle, and end, so your questions tell a story.
What are some of your favorite interview questions when you're producing the material for the documentary? Apart from what is your aha moment? Any suggestions you have? Some of the go-to questions you.
I say, how did that make you feel?
Whatever
they're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my teacher said, you'll never be a programmer, you're a girl. And you say, well, how did that make you feel? Oh, that will be powerful. And then when did you decide that his opinion didn't matter? How did that make you feel? And feelings beat information every day.
What's the ideal duration of a documentary? If it's not multi-series, but a single documentary.
If you want to make an independent one, and I don't generally do that, but something like your story, that story is a really good story, I'd say, and you could enter it in festivals once you've done it. But you've got to spend a long time doing it. You've got to raise money. You've got to film with a good filmmaker, a good shooter. You got to do good sound. You can't just throw down the camera. Or you could practice and become your own cameraman.
Do you think it's like if we go tactical, 1 hour? Let's say you have 12 hours of material. What? 12 interviews, 12 hours. 1 hour event or 30 minutes?
The golden ratio is 28 to 1.
28 to 1.
Yeah, remember that.
Gotcha.
It always works.
Just recently finished David Beckham documentary, four part, like the Beckham documentary. David Beckham, the soccer player from LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
30 hours of interviews with him over 10 sessions. 15 hours with his wife.
Good.
And roughly, I would say maybe 30 plus hours with his colleagues, his dad, mom, and so forth, his friends.
Great. So he's got a killer ratio. He's
Yeah.
got like a 60 to 1 ratio.
And I think the ratio holds up because those 4 parts, 70 minutes each.
Yeah.
28 to 1. Gotcha.
28's the minimum.
It can be. And it can be as high as 30 to 1, 50 to 1.
Yeah, it could be 50, but
it should not be like 10 to 1.
No.
Yeah.
No, you can't do it. It'll suck.
Yeah.
Make it 28 to 1.
That's a nice advice.
Now, not everybody will agree with that because they're used to making terrible stuff for cable.
Yes.
And those guys just go out and shoot like crazy.
Uh-huh.
And they shoot everything, and then they get, a high ratio, but it's crap. So making sure it's 28 to 1 that's good, and then anything above that is also good. But the trouble is, I've run into people who are having nervous breakdowns because they had too much footage, and they couldn't make decisions, and they had too many interviews and too many transcripts.
Decision paralysis.
So be disciplined about it, and go after. Sometimes you'll have a story in mind, but be willing for that story to change. I had a story for this book that I sold the book to a publisher, but I think he's going to get a different book because already, after 2 months of research and 12 interviews, I can see it changing.
What's the right way to start a documentary and to end it?
There's there's a bunch of different ways. It's a good idea to start in the story. Don't have an introduction. Start in the story. A woman's being chased by a tiger. You can't beat it.
Capture the attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or a woman is walking out of the house with her baby and her luggage. She just left her husband. That's where you start. And then you backtrack and tell what happened that led up to that. But start in the middle of the action.
Got it. What about the end?
What about what?
How do you finish the documentary on a high note so that people crave for more?
Well, what if there's not a high note?
Say again?
Sometimes there's not a high note.
Uh-huh.
But there should be, especially if it's commercial. And if you want to win film festivals, there's got to be a high note. Now, maybe the high note is the woman leaves her husband and discovers a much better life. She's not abused anymore. And maybe she becomes a therapist for abused women. Or maybe she learns how to program. You know? Maybe your story, you know, maybe one of your women is walking out on her husband because he won't let her work. But she wants to program.
My final question to you.
Sure.
We know we are almost out of time. Three documentaries, three of your favorite documentaries which you are not part of. Some of the documentaries you really loved, but who were produced by your colleagues. I'm looking for recommendations.
Sure,
to watch.
sure.
I love documentaries.
Well, there's a film called The Thin Blue Line, and it's about it's a cop show, and it's by a very famous documentary maker whose name I can't remember.
Say again the name.
It's called The Thin Blue Line.
Thin Blue Line, got it. Anything else to recommend?
I'm trying to think. You know, they come in and out of my head, and if I see a new one, I forget about the last one. I'm sorry, I'm stuck.
Yeah, no worries, that's fine. And I guess as a postscriptum, your advice for aspiring documentarists?
I would say make sure you really want to do it, because there's a lot of heartbreak. Anything that involves the arts is going to be an uphill climb. Try, you know, keep your day job, raise money, make your film a little at a time. Figure out, get some friends who happen to be really good cameramen, or talk to people about your film and get them excited about it, or set up a GoFundMe site and try to get money for your film. Don't go out with nothing, because you won't get good stuff. It really pays to start with a story that's very, very strong. I heard of a story that I didn't do, but it was about, or maybe somebody did it. It was about a woman who started in Nigeria. She started training other women how to be mechanics, car mechanics, because she was a car mechanic. Her father had trained her. So she set up her garage to be a training center, but they had to pay tuition. So they had to keep their day jobs, and at night they'd come and learn how to work on cars. Then they all went out and started their own little backyard shops. And it was this great, great story, and I never did anything with it. Or maybe somebody did. I'm getting old, I'm forgetting. I don't think anybody ever did anything with that, but that would have been a great story.
Thank you, James.
So that's my favorite film that hasn't been made.
So James Barrat, Hub Talks. Be so good, we cannot ignore you.